Hello, and welcome back to It's a Very Exciting Time, a podcast by a UFO nerd and his tolerant friend. My name is Scott, and I've been fascinated by the phenomenon my whole life.
And I'm Chuck. I'm an aerospace nerd and a tolerant friend.
We started this podcast because since 2017, there have been shocking revelations, from news of secret Pentagon programs to confirmed videos of astonishing craft. In a nutshell, now that we know the government has recovered non-human technology.
Or at least we will, once we finish watching all of these whistleblower interviews.
My God, there's so many. It raises a natural question. If UFOs are real, what else? Suddenly, some of these other parts of the phenomenon that seemed unlikely are pulled into the realm of the possible.
I like how you got really deep when you said, what else? But even if they may still be unlikely, but even if it's new science and not aliens.
Woo! It's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
And it's an extra exciting time this week because all of our merch just dropped. If you're looking at the camera, you can see my adorable t-shirt of a duck in a flying saucer. If you're not looking at the camera, you can go to veryexcitingtime.com/merch to see all of our new shirts. We've got the podcast logo. We've got a shirt that says UFO nerd. We've got a shirt that says tolerant friend. We've even got a special shirt that we just made for Annie and Erica that's wet science nerd. So for those times when marine biologist is a little too fancy or wordy for you, you can go for your wet science nerd. But the two I'm most excited about, I'm not going to lie, are, as I just mentioned, we've got this shirt with a great cartoon done by my good friend Tyler Sticka of a duck in a flying saucer. Annie is very grumpy that it's not a duck in a nutshell. I don't really know how to make that visual metaphor work, but maybe someday.
It's hard to draw
and the
on
other
that,
one,
Phil.
the other one, which I haven't actually bought a copy of yet, but I'm going to very soon, is Chuck, do you know that like old band t-shirt style that was like the Beatles? It was like John and Paul and George and Ringo with little ampersands at the end of each line. So we did one of those with the 5 observables. So it's like accelerating and hypersonic and transmedium and stuff. Anyway, it looks great. I'm super excited about it. So yeah, all new shirts. They're from Cotton Bureau, a company that we like. They make good quality shirts. I'm wearing the what is it? The premium heavyweight is what I get. It's nice and soft, and it doesn't fit me like a sausage casing. It's not cut in a triangle like American Apparel shirt.
Yeah, and they also have hipster cut if you get the other one. I forget what it's called.
Yeah,
if that's what you're into.
If that's
the premium lightweight. Can we get them in other colors too? Is that
maybe? At the moment, you can get it in any color you want, as long as that color is black. I will consider adding other colors later.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Oh, man. Chuck, it has been a wild freaking time. Just a few episodes ago, I felt like, oh my God, like, what am I going to talk about? Like, nothing is happening. And considered calling you up and skipping the episode. This time around, we've got whistleblowers coming out of every door. It's wild. There are videos everywhere. And I had to make a decision. Like, what is our story this week? And the way I usually do this is I kind of base it on like, what's getting the most traction in the UFO communities on Twitter and Blue Sky and Reddit and stuff. And without question, the story that is getting the most traction right now is, do you remember a little while ago, the Immaculate Constellation story broke?
Yeah,
so we had this journalist. Yeah. So this journalist, Michael Schellenberger, came out and he said he had been talking to a DoD insider who had found documents outlining what Immaculate Constellation was. And, it's this inappropriate program and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that whistleblower is out now and has given a big interview to Jeremy Corbell and legendary UFO journalist George Knapp.
Cool. Nice.
Very exciting. Unfortunately, they're doing the thing where they broke it into 3 segments. So
Yeah, that
as
figures.
we record right now, 2 of those segments have dropped.
Mm.
And there's a problem.
Oh
One of the
no.
problems
Okay.
is one of the things this guy says is the title of the document that he found it in was like Shriver War Games. So
What's that mean to you? Or like, why is that a problem?
Shriver, I believe, is the name of an Air Force base. And forgive me if I got that wrong. I may have. I haven't actually watched it yet.
Mm.
But the war game part implies that everything you read in the document is fictional. This is the scenario that the
Oh, okay.
participating agencies are wargaming.
I see.
And maybe this is background information to set up the scenario and
Sure.
this is a real program, or maybe it's part of the war game. But of
Got it.
course, the community is kind of tearing itself apart over that at the moment. And the other thing is just that there's a third part coming literally on Tuesday. So I would feel really, really silly if we sat down and talked about what he says in these first 2 videos. And to be fair, there's some good stuff in there. Like there's a bit where he apparently has Marco Rubio confronting Sean Kirkpatrick. Like, awesome. Can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah.
But I would feel so weird doing a big video like we do and then having to revisit it days later with either, hey, even bigger news happened, because they're going to save the most earth-shattering stuff for the third one, or, hey, turns out, since we did that, the community has debunked it, and this turns out to be a nothing burger. So,
well, what are we going to talk about today, then?
Yeah, so that's definitely the story. We're going to wait until that video drops on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know when we will record, maybe later this week, might be as late as next weekend, but sometime in the next week or so, you will get a full, very exciting episode about that whistleblower. In the meantime, I wanted to at least get an episode out and kind of talk about all the stuff that has happened. So there's enough other stuff going on that there's probably another 2 episodes.
Oh.
And we'll touch on those things, but mostly let's just do kind of a survey course of the last few weeks of the UFO world.
Okay.
Cool. The first thing, as you know, Representative Luna in the House Oversight Committee has her task force, I forget the full title, but the Federal Secrets Task Force, where she's looking into JFK and RFK and UFOs. Yeah. Robert Kennedy, JFK's brother, was also a senator and was assassinated.
Not
RFK Jr. That's a different guy.
All right. I was very confused. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So they had announced that there was going to be a full committee hearing on UAPs in particular on the week of May 12th. On May 12th, actually, is what they said.
Hey.
But it came out this week that they haven't actually scheduled anything. The way that the House works is you have to schedule something at least a week in advance. So they didn't do that, and therefore there will be no hearing this week. Now, the word is this was just a snafu. There's a lot of other stuff going on in Congress, you may have heard. So it'll probably still happen maybe next week, but it ain't happening this week. So
disappointing, but it happens. How did the community react, though?
Oh, full conspiracy mode.
Okay, yeah, that's what I expected.
Yeah. They did a briefing, a roundtable, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, where Lue Elizondo and some others came to town to brief Congress about UAPs, and that got delayed by a single day. But 3 different people gave 3 different reasons why. Like Luna said it was Grush's fault. Elizondo said it was because of taxes. Somebody else said something else. And everybody's like, holy shit, they're trying to shut us down. And then, Luna is like on and on saying, yeah, for sure. The hearing is going to happen on May 12th, May 12th. And then guess what? Nobody scheduled it. Is it totally innocent or is it a conspiracy?
This full-on Hanlon's razor here. It's so much easier to imagine that they forgot to book the room.
Right. Well, and case in point, for 24 hours, everyone was freaking out about like Luna was blaming Grush that this hearing, this briefing, this roundtable didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then it just happened the next day.
Yeah,
It
right.
was fine. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of assuming this is the same thing. It will happen.
Yeah.
It just didn't get scheduled in time.
Yeah. So this is the one that they were going to bring in like Grush and get all his clearances back and everything. Like, did he at least get his clearances?
Maybe. We don't actually know what's going to happen in that hearing. Presumably,
okay.
Grush will be involved because he works for Burleson now, and
Mhm.
he's going to point them in the right direction. But speaking of his clearances, on April 30th, Representative Burleson said that Grush is still working on getting his full clearances restored. He said, right now, quote, he got at least his top secret clearance. Now he's working on clearance to talk about the special access program. So we've talked about this before. Top secret is kind of like the highest broad categorization. But then there is SCI, which is secure compartmented information. And that's the need to know part. So
Mhm.
you have top secret clearance, but that doesn't mean that you have clearance to talk about these programs where you're not on the bigot list. So
Yeah.
he said right now he's working on his TSSCI clearance. But what we may end up having to do if we can't ultimately get that full approval is we'll have to have a portion of the meeting where it's top secret and then a portion where Grush would have to leave and we could have further conversation.
That's so awkward.
Right? Hey, Dave, can you step out of the room for a minute so we can talk about the stuff you told us to investigate, but you're not cleared to hear us talk about it?
Yeah. But also, how does this even work? Like, can he still talk about things? Like, is it write only permission where you can tell them about things, but you can't hear that they absorbed it? Or like what?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, in theory, he's not supposed to talk about this stuff at all.
Right.
In practice, we have years of experience watching Lue Elizondo walk right up to the line of what he is legally allowed to say and dance around it and strongly infer something without
Mhm.
explicitly saying it. I would be willing to bet that Grush is able to give them quite a bit of guidance without violating any security protocols. So they probably still have plenty to talk about in the SCI portion, even if Grush legally can't be in the room.
One of the things that's interesting to me is uh, the idea that he would still be able to remember which stuff was compartmented and which wasn't. Like,
Mhm.
that sounds really hard.
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
know.
our good boy, right? That's what
Yeah,
made him good at his
it's a
job.
good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Um,
okay. So he didn't, no UAP hearing, no clearances or no full
mhm.
clearances. Did anything good happen this last couple of weeks?
Yeah. On May
Okay.
1st, they had a big roundtable. This was actually
Okay.
hosted by the UAPDF, the UAP Disclosure Fund, which is an advocacy group that a bunch of the big names are involved in. They actually had a whole big thing happen this week, too, where they did a restructuring. Like Lue Elizondo and Gary Nolan were on the board before, and they've both stepped down, which, of course, with the community in full conspiracy mode, was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
and there's a big thing with Lue Elizondo that we're going to talk about in a moment, but it appears to just be a non-remarkable thing. Gary Nolan in particular said, I'm stepping down because I'm overcommitted. I kind of need to pay attention to my cancer research job, guys. But don't worry, because Avi Loeb took my spot, so there'll still be someone there advocating for good science and stuff.
Yeah. That's
But
okay.
yeah, so the UAPDF hosted a roundtable for Congress with, among other people, Eric Davis and Lue Elizondo. And there's loads of wild stuff to dig in there, including Eric Davis once again strongly hinting that he wrote the Wilson Davis memo. This is one of the things that, if you don't remember our Wilson Davis episode, which was a long time ago,
Don't.
they have had to dance around the fact that Eric Davis wrote this memo. It says it was written by Eric Davis, but maybe it was actually a screenplay. Maybe it's fan fiction, and Eric Davis has never quite been able to legally say, yeah, I wrote it. Yes, I spoke to Admiral Wilson. But at this point over the years, he has given so many hints where he has obliquely said, I spoke with a general who was denied access to, and that kind of thing. So once again, he strongly hinted that he wrote the Wilson Davis memo. And also, just a little bit of news here. He told Representative Burleson about 4 different alien races who have been interacting with Earth, including the Greys, the Nordics, the Reptilians, and the Insectoids.
What? Why are we not talking about that today? It seems like a pretty big deal.
That is a very, very good question, and I'm going to completely level with you. I haven't watched the video yet. It's a 3-hour-long congressional briefing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
As I hinted at the top of the show, I kind of pick what topic to talk about based on like what the community's on fire about. And you would think that would be the thing people like latched onto. But aside from a brief flurry right after he said it, nobody's been talking about it. And I think it's one of those things like it's so wild that nobody really knows how to hang their hat on it. But I will say, it kind of feels like 2025 is the year where all the disclosure people are like, gloves off. Like, we're saying the quiet parts out loud this year.
Yeah.
Corbell especially appears to be fed up. He's like, look, we tried to do it your way. We tried to walk these people into Congress and have them brief you, and you guys aren't pulling up your end of the bargain. So we're going to do it the hard way, and we're just going to interview them and put it out on the news and see what happens. Eric Davis popping up in Congress and not just being like, yeah, there's a crash retrieval program, but being like, yes, there's 4 different alien races.
Yeah. Interesting.
This is a market shift.
Do you think that people aren't paying attention to it because it's just too big, or because does Eric Davis have a reliability problem, or?
Almost the opposite. As far as I can tell, Eric Davis is one of the rare people that everyone trusts. He apparently has a photographic memory, and he's just a very by the book guy. He knows everything, he knows everyone, and he's not prone to hyperbole. That said, he has effectively been under a non-disclosure agreement for years because of the company he worked at told him not to give interviews. That changed recently, and he started popping up on the circuit again, talking to people. And whenever he does, he has a tendency to just kind of casually drop bombs. So I'm very excited about hearing Eric Davis talk. And of course, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. In terms of why aren't people reacting to it, I think the problem is this information is going to hit people right in their biases. If you're like me and you already believe that there is a non-human presence on Earth, hearing that there are multiple non-human races here isn't a leap. I raise a little bit of an eyebrow at like Nordics and reptilians. Like, those ones have a lot of conspiracy theory baggage tied up in them. Nordics, as you can imagine, uncomfortably aligned with certain racial theories. Reptilians, nicely aligned with Illuminati control narratives. But the idea that there are multiple alien races isn't weird to me. I'm like, yeah, if there's one, why wouldn't there be more?
Right. Yeah. Fermi's paradox says that too. Yeah.
Right. On the other hand, if you are a nuts and bolts person who's already struggling with the idea of aliens, non-human, like, okay, there's something in the air, but it's probably Russia, you're going to hear some guy say Greys and immediately stop listening. So,
makes sense.
Like I said, I think it's one of these things that just kind of hits people right in their biases. And although it is unusual to hear someone of Eric Davis's caliber saying this part overtly, I think it just didn't make as big as a wave. Now, that said, I have not watched the video. Maybe there's some context in there I'm missing. Maybe I'm going to watch it and come back and go, holy shit, you guys, like, this is a big deal. I think probably this roundtable is an episode on its own.
Yeah.
But I think it is a less immediate pressing story than the Immaculate Constellation whistleblower. And that's why we're kind of doing this weird in between mini episode before I do that episode. And then we'll probably do the roundtable.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, the main thing, like I said, is everybody's talking about this new whistleblower.
Yeah. So what's that about?
Yeah, I actually misspoke. There are multiple new whistleblowers.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
So I already told you that, the big one, and we'll talk about it again in a moment. But a few of the other whistleblowers on Reddit, there was an anonymous post from a quote private contractor for various DoD agencies who announced that he has 8 months to live and doesn't give a fuck anymore, and posted a bunch of documents saying that through reverse engineering of recovered UAP, the U.S. has cracked 0-point energy in anti-gravity.
Oh, hey, that's so that's interesting. But my neighbor who doesn't know how to code mentioned to me the other day that he's pretty sure he's cracked AGI. And I just like when people say they cracked a thing, especially anonymous Redditors, I'm like, really?
Yeah, I absolutely take anonymous Redditor posts with a grain of salt. We have talked about a couple here on the show before. And whenever we do, I try to be very careful to acknowledge, hey, we're talking about this because it's a really interesting post. And if anything, and it is true, it's pretty significant. But I'm not staking my reputation on it being true. I just think it's interesting to talk about. Like the EBO scientist who talked about doing, biological studies on recovered corpses of non-human people. Like, fascinating, right?
Yeah. So you usually
my
have
mind,
some reason, right? Like some reason to think it's more credible than others.
For sure. To my mind, this slots in the same bucket. But there is one data point that makes it pretty interesting. Black Vault, who we've talked about a few times, who's the guy who files like FOIA requests out the wazoo, and is the guy who's always coming back with, hey, the government mentioned document X, I got a copy of it. He pointed out that among the documents that this person posted on Reddit was a color version of something that we have only seen a poorly photocopied black and white version of from Black Vault's own FOIA requests. So he's like, look, at the very least, this one page of this guy's like document dump is legit and shows that he had access to the original version, which nobody else in the community has. That's interesting. That doesn't mean anything else in it is true. And if you're conspiracy minded, the way that you tell a lie is you sprinkle some truths in. So you put in one thing the community can verify, and that lends the rest of your stuff credibility. Anyway, we may talk about that guy. The community is pretty interested in what he had to say.
Cool.
Next whistleblower, you'll like this one. Former NASA chief of aerospace medicine, Dr. Gregory Rogers, gave an interview saying that multiple astronauts confided in him that they saw UFOs in formation following the space shuttle. And he says he personally was shown security footage of a flying saucer with an Air Force logo. And I just realized the way that I wrote that sentence implies that he saw security footage of it in space. He said he saw footage of it being tested in a hangar and lifting off the ground and rotating and pivoting. Yeah.
So two separate things, but in his career, he's seen some very interesting UAP related things.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty exciting to hear a credible, highly ranked NASA official talking about it. It's disappointing that we can't see it. That sounds cool.
Well, and this is kind of the problem with these people is they come out and they're like, I saw a video once. And you're like, okay, do you have the video? No. Well, the story kind of stops there. And what I see it is, and Leslie Kean made this point years ago when she wrote her book on UFOs that was exclusively interviewing highly credible witnesses. It is not really what this guy is saying. It is who he is that is saying it. This is a man who's already had a very successful career as the chief of aerospace medicine at NASA, right? A flight surgeon for astronauts. This dude got very high up. He is retired. He has nothing to gain by coming out now and being like, yeah, I saw a UFO once.
Yeah.
And he's very clear. He's like, look, I'm not going to tell you the name of the astronauts because there's still a lot of stigma around them. Like, they confided in me as a doctor. Like, I'm not going to tell you, but I will tell you that multiple astronauts, that's really interesting. So the credibility of the guy is what I think is valuable here.
Yeah, and I think we've heard stories like that for a long time, especially about the stigma around people who report it.
Absolutely.
In particular.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And then literally this morning, Ross Coulthart dropped a new whistleblower interview with retired U.S. Border Patrol agent Bob Thompson, who says that hundreds of Custom and Border Patrol agents have seen UFOs, including orbs and triangular craft at the southern border. Thompson says he has received eyewitness reports from agents of portals opening in the sky.
Oh, interesting. So astronauts and border patrol agents, maybe aliens just really love like liminal spaces. That's right. Yeah. So, like walking down that hallway in the,
right? All they want to do is transition in and out of one part of reality and another.
It's actually surfing. They're all.
Yeah. Now, of course, the big story, as I teased earlier, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, they're dropping interviews with new whistleblower Matthew Brown, who appears to be the source of the Immaculate Constellation story. Again, I have not listened to these videos. This is just what I'm absorbing through osmosis in the community. But he talks about how he came across the Immaculate Constellation info, why he went public, what the processes he went through trying to report this. One thing that I thought was really interesting is he found this document just by browsing stuff that he has access to. And then he got a presentation. You know how you have to sit through like corporate security presentations and they're like, here's what to do if you have PII and, you know, how to avoid sharing personal information. So apparently in government circles, there's what's called slippage, which is when you are exposed to something that you should not have been exposed to, you're supposed to let someone know, not because you've committed a crime, but because something has gone wrong and it needs to be cleaned up. He tried going to his boss. His boss kind of played it off like it was a joke, told him to delete the file. He's like, that doesn't sound right. Goes to his boss's boss. His boss also tries to play it off like a joke. And like neither one of them is like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have been exposed to this. We'll go deal with it. So then he goes to like report to Congress. Congress kind of blows him off. Like he ends up like taking this whole path that leads him to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. He also has a story about Marco Rubio confronting Sean Kirkpatrick about a secret UFO program that has been concealed from Congress that includes the quote, Marco Rubio saying, "What the hell is the executive branch up to?"
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. So that sounds super interesting, cool. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm pumped, but only the first two parts are out. Third part drops on Tuesday. So full episode very soon. We'll see if it's something.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm understanding now why you struggled to get through all these interviews.
Oh my God, there's so many.
That's crazy. So Eric Davis was talking to Congress at a roundtable. Who else was there?
Oh man, Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, former assistant director, secretary, I forget his title, Chris Mellon, old fan of the podcast, and Lue Elizondo.
It's just, a couple names.
Yeah, no big deal.
No big. Yeah, anything from that or from them at all?
So I mentioned that, Eric Davis teased 4 different alien races. Again, I have not listened to this yet. It's a 3-hour congressional roundtable. I've seen a couple of interesting quotes. My guess is this is going to be a good kind of like 101 level thing. This is experts coming to brief Congress. This was not a committee meeting where these people are under oath. This was something the UAP Disclosure Fund put on to educate Congress. So I'm hopeful that there'll be some good stuff in there, but this may be kind of the foundation for this 101 UFOs 101 episode that we've been threatening to do for a while.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So we will probably do an episode on this soon for sure. But the real big story that came out of it and that the community latched onto and has been going gangbusters this week
Yeah.
is that Lue Elizondo had a very bad day.
Oh, wow.
Elizondo stood up at this round table and he was talking to them like he normally does, and he's showing them slides. And at one point, he holds up a photo. This is a new UFO photo that nobody's shared before.
Mhm.
He says, this is a lenticular object. We look at the shadow being cast. It is significantly large. The object is potentially anywhere between 600 and 1,000 feet in diameter. By the way, the link to the photo is in the show notes.
Okay.
I cannot vouch for the veracity of this photo. I didn't take it, but this is an example of one of the many, many, many incidents involving commercial and private pilots. Guess what?
Okay.
They don't know where to report it. Guess
That's
what?
valid.
Congress has no idea that this is happening on a regular basis. That's the problem. Why I decided to share this photo with you, taken from a civilian pilot now, is because the same challenges that our pilots or military pilots are facing as to where to report it, who's going to analyze it, what do you do with the information, multiply that for the civilian aviation community. Do they report to the FAA? Do they report to NORA? Maybe the Air Force? Maybe a civilian organization? Who's responsible for getting this information? Now, again, let me caveat, this is not vetted. This was taken by a civilian pilot, but once again, you would think this information would be important for somebody to look at.
Yeah, like I'm looking at this photo. It looks good. Like
It's
looks like
it's
a really
compelling on first glance, right? Yeah, it looks like a big silver UFO hovering over a field. Yeah.
Yeah, gigantic shadow and everything. I mean, what was wrong with it? Is this not a thing?
It was immediately debunked. It turns out to be a photo of two circular crop fields. And you can, again, link in the show notes, like the GeoFinder community managed to find an almost identical aerial shot of it where it is just much more clear that these are, circular fields that are being watered. Like,
yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, but the point is still the same. Like, if there was a good process, that wouldn't have shown up, right?
Yep. However, it's a little embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
To stand up and show this photo to Congress. Elizondo tweeted the next day after this was debunked. He says, look, as you know, I'm always the first to admit mistakes, but this is not one of those times. The facts regarding the photo that I shared from Private Pilot, as I emphasized several times yesterday during the forum, are as follows. 1, the specific photo had only just been handed to me by a private pilot that morning prior to the forum. 2, the photo had not yet been vetted. 3, the dimensions I quoted were, per the pilot's own assessment, of what he saw based on altitude and experience. The purpose of me showing the photo was to illustrate the need for civilian and commercial pilots to have a central reporting mechanism to report potential anomalous sightings. In this case, the pilot who took the photo using his own camera did not have a way to report what he believed was anomalous. Once again, as I stated during the forum, I only received permission to release it that morning and was only made aware of it shortly before.
It sounds like he had a hell of a time on X and wherever, and he sounds a little like defensive, but I still think like what he said, it's still legit. It's a problem, and
he's
one
not
worth dealing
wrong.
with.
But part of the reason he sounds defensive is this is not the first time he has publicly shared an exciting new photo that was immediately debunked. And I don't mean like days later. I mean like within minutes. Post it, like people were on it, buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, this year, just a few months ago, when Elizondo was doing his tour, his like public speaking gigs, he shared a photo, which very similar. He's like, I'm not vouching for this, but this is a photo that was shared of me of what appears to be some sort of mothership up in the clouds. Turned out to just be a cloud. And at the time he tweeted, a photo that was provided to me by a friend in government a couple years ago was presented by me 2 days ago at our engagement in Philadelphia. Looks like we can put this one to bed as our friends in Twitter figured or solved this one. good lesson here. Just because someone in government gives me something, due diligence and scrutiny is always a good idea. Onwards and upwards.
I mean, it sucks, but also I think there's something interesting there that, like, that isn't covered here. And that is, you mentioned that it was debunked within moments.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the chances that that image has been floating around for 2 years before it actually got to Lue? And the folks who saw it after he reported were like, "Oh, I remember that one. Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think we debunked that too." So I don't know that it is actually immediate. I think it's that they had a 2-year head start on Lue,
Maybe.
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 Um,
I'm not, the guy who cracked it. It looked like they
yeah,
just figured it out because they were suspicious of it. But
yeah,
the point
yeah.
is, a lot of people in the community were a little uncomfortable with how hand wavy Lou was with this. And I have to admit, I'm feeling a little off about it myself.
Really?
Everything Lou said is right. There
Mhm.
is no good reporting process for civilian aviation. That is a problem, and it does need to be talked about. But there are better ways that you could make that point than by sharing a brand new photo that you have not yourself investigated. Um, Now, I'm going to share two perspectives on this. Um, but what I will say is the community was immediately very, very upset about this.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Kelly Chase, one of my favorite podcasters, who of formerly of the UFO rabbit hole, currently of Cosmosis,
Okay.
saw someone else tweet like, "Oh well, like on to the next one." And she was like, "I don't think we should be so quick to move on from this. This is twice now that he has done this. We should be asking a question: how does this keep happening to someone of Lue Elizondo's caliber?" And the community got pretty vicious. Lue has a lot of defenders. They came out and attacked her. At one point, Lue blocked her on Twitter, which she
Mhm.
shared. And then he had to do the thing that celebrities always do, which is, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I guess my account got hacked." And everybody's like, "Lou, your fucking account didn't got hacked. You were upset that someone was calling you out on your shit." But I think these two quotes that I'm about to share kind of illustrate the opposite sides of being critical of Lou's approach to this photo and how upset you want to be about it. I'm going to share a quote from Reddit user Project Gauche. Um, this is just a nice consolidated version of something that I saw many people on Reddit and Twitter saying. Said, "A few days ago, we got an interview with a new whistleblower, Matthew Brown. After the interview, many people warned that disinformation campaigns would come out if the whistleblower was legit. And we have seen this a few times. Some big UFO news breaks, and all of a sudden, there's a big, easily debunked story that drops at the exact same moment. And it's
Mhm.
really hard not to go, huh, like, did somebody put this out here to kind of like distract the community?" He said, "Much of what we saw when Grush initially came forward with his information was like this. Not even a week has passed since Matthew Brown comes out, and suddenly here we have Lue Elizondo spreading easily debunkable proof to the mainstream media. If this is not something that would muddy the waters and put people off the topic, I don't know what is. It is my firm belief that Elizondo should not be trusted from here on out."
I don't think we should trust anyone who has like photos. I think we should trust but verify, right? Like
Sure.
it's, I mean, of the, what there was a stat like a while ago about the number of like legit reports compared to
Right.
illegitimate, and it's shockingly high. So
Right.
like
Yeah,
I don't,
even during the drones, right? It was something like
yeah,
90 or 95%
right.
of the reported sightings were easily disproved. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you have to trust people based on things other than an image. But also,
Mhm.
I just want to say, like, if the community wasn't making a big deal about this, would it go anywhere? I think the community's efforts to debunk it and yell at Lou are actually the thing that might be fueling this.
Mm, that's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. But So look, the reason I shared this quote is
Yeah, yeah,
there's a contingent on Reddit who, as I said, this was already a very conspiracy minded week. They were already
right, yeah,
primed for people are here to fuck with us. And then Lue comes out with this easily debunked photo. Probably a mistake, but the timing is not great. And the thing is, there has always been a contingent who is deeply suspicious of Lue. He has a counterintelligence background, and his emphasis on UAP has always been through the lens of national security threat. Now, you and I have talked about Lue many, many times, and
yeah,
how we also feel a little uncomfortable with his emphasis on national security. But it makes sense. As he has said himself, his audience was not the public. His audience was the DoD. He was trying to get the US government to take UFOs seriously. And the language that you speak to power in that case is national security threat.
yeah.
But it definitely, when you are working in a community that has been stigmatized for so long and has been infiltrated by counterintelligence agents before, see Richard Doty,
Mhm.
it's understandable that they would be a little gun shy about someone like Lue Elizondo. And when he comes out with easily debunked information, it's really hard not to paint him in that.
Yeah,
That said,
I still
we've
like
talked
him.
about Lue a lot. Yeah, I do too. I think he's done a lot of good for disclosure as a whole. I don't
Mhm.
think this was intentional. I think it was sloppy, but
Yeah.
I think people are struggling to accept that someone like Lue would be sloppy. The way he presents himself doesn't really match with he breathlessly, you guys, he'll never believe this photo I just got handed
Yeah.
outside. Like, that's not his vibe usually, so it seems a little off. Um, that said, let me give you another quote.
Okay.
Richard Dolan, who is another legendary UFO researcher who, frankly, we have not talked enough about, um, put up a really good quote about it. He said, look, this has been mercilessly ridiculed and mocked online. I mean, yes, Lue did state that he cannot vouch for the veracity of the photo. He didn't take it. He says it's not vetted, but this is the second time he has stepped into something like this. You've got to be careful when you're putting evidence out there. The skeptics are going to jump all over this. Representatives Luna and Burleson are staking real political capital on this briefing. The UAP disclosure movement cannot afford basic errors when you're fighting decades of institutional resistance.
I get it. I think it makes sense. It is a higher stakes game, and he should be he should absolutely be more careful, especially a counter
Uh-huh.
intel agent shouldn't accept things that were handed to him hours before.
Right?
Like he should know better. Uh, but I do think that mistakes happen, and
Mhm.
I'm I'm not gonna vote him off the island personally.
No, no, I'm with you on that. Yeah, what I'm looking for from Lou moving forward is just a little more caution, right? Like, look, man, you had a valid point to make about, how do civilian pilots report it? You could have made that point with
Yeah,
a dozen other photos that you have in your arsenal that have already been vetted and are
sure.
not easily debunked. I
Right.
understand you have a new one and you were excited,
Yeah.
but man, you got to put it through the paces. You
Yeah.
know a lot of smart people. I know you do. Take the photo to them. Go ask Gary. Hey man, does anything about this raise? Ask
And
Avi Loeb. Fuck man,
ask
put it
Reddit.
up on Reddit. Like,
Yeah.
like, ask the community. Hey guys, I got this new photo. I'm really excited about it. Does anybody see any red flags? If he had
Yeah.
just come at it from a slightly different angle,
Yeah.
I think the community would have had his back immediately. Like if
Maybe.
he was sharing new stuff, looking for the community to help him vet it and not trying to claim it was a real thing, awesome. But although he did say this hasn't been vetted, he also said, what you see here is a lenticular craft 600 to 1,000 feet wide. Like he
Mhm.
started speaking with authority and then walked it back just a little bit. He gave himself
Mhm.
an out. And that's backwards. That's not the way that you need to handle this when you got
Yeah.
unvetted material. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Dolan on this. I like you said, I'm not voting Elizondo off the island, but buddy, you're too high profile to be making rookie mistakes like this. Like you've got to
Yeah.
bring more rigor to your game if you're going to be an A credibility person. And that's your goal, right? It's to convince everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest risk here though is that Lue quits. And
Mm.
so I think regardless of this, I don't use X very often, but I think I'm gonna log in and send him a DM that's like, hey, keep at it.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah. I hope our audience will too. Like, it's okay to give people feedback, but if you see Lou getting a ton of shit, like maybe just send him a nice note.
Yeah.
Or
I
any
don't
of
think
our
we have to
people.
worry about Lou quitting, but I
Yeah.
agree with you. Yeah.
He's got a thick skin.
Yeah, the point is Lou had a bad week.
Yeah.
You know, like we had this big round table. I still need to do a report on it. Eric Davis said some fascinating things. Tim Gallaudet and Chris Mellon were there as well. I'm sure
Oh,
they
wow.
said great things. And unfortunately, the story that sucked all the oxygen out of the room was Lou sharing a debunked photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you
It's
gonna
too
do?
bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, we will be back sooner than later with a new
Mhm.
episode about the new Immaculate Constellation whistleblower as soon as that third episode drops. So keep your ears to the ground. You can hit our website, pick up some t-shirts. Very exciting to share these. So yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you everybody for joining us on It's a Very Exciting Time. You can find show notes and more on our website, veryexcitingtime.com, as well as links to our Discord and social media accounts.
And in a nutshell, you can feel free to email us at Scott or Chuck at Very Exciting Time. And if you want to support, you just said about the t-shirts, but you added a line in mine about t-shirts. What am I supposed
Oh
to do
man,
here?
it's almost like we didn't rehearse.
Well, yeah, you can get some merch, and you know where our people.
And Chuck, as always, my wife thanks you for listening to me talk about UFOs so she doesn't have to.